Hi, good afternoon, Jimmy. Nice meeting you.
Hello, good afternoon, Arena. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. I'm great. So, how's the pandemic thing? Because currently we are still in the pandemic situation, right?
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's not really great in India, at least. Situation is getting worse in some places. Community transmission is set in, but we are done with the lockdowns. So people have started, going outside and do their new normal activities. So let's hope
Wow.
it will be down in some after some more months. But situation is not really great.
Not really great, right? But we just
Yeah.
hope pandemic will over soon.
Everybody wants to get it over. Yeah,
Okay, thanks for joining us because October is a very exciting month because
I
we're going
agree.
to celebrate, I think, a numbers of celebration, especially for like a World Animal Day. We're going to have World
All right.
Animal Day soon, right? And
Right.
also for us, it's like Bee Tourist Community Festival. It's an annually event, and we are
Mm-hmm.
trying to promote for the tourists. So when we interpreting the tourists, we don't mean just like a visitor. So we have 7 topics to talk about
Right.
it. And
Mm.
today, I'm really feeling grateful that you're able to join us and would like to share your expertise and also your experiences about your conservation work, with us into the topic of the word R. Actually, R is stand for rainforest, but we are not going
Interesting. Yeah.
to focusing on the forest, but we are focusing on the habitat, right? The
Right.
habitat,
Right.
more
Right.
important.
Agree. It's an interesting concept. Yeah, I like it, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. I thank to you. So, and just to introduce a little bit, Jimmy background. We met sometime because of Mekong also. Yeah, because of one of the
Right.
events we met. I'm really grateful that we able to connecting back. So, just to share with you, Jimmy background, what he actually attracts me is not about just his handsome face. Yeah, it's about his job. When I first know about Jimmy, when I heard he told me like, oh, I just a researcher. So at first I thought he was just like a normal researcher, and then when later I realized that, oh my God, his research is on tiger, and he's do a lot of conservation work with tiger, and since year 2004, my God. And to be honest, in my whole life, I think I got 2 animal creatures that I'm afraid of. Okay,
Mhm.
um, snake, snake, and then the next thing will be a tiger. So I think it will be going to be a very nice and taking up this opportunity. Let Jimmy to share with us, not only
Mm.
because it's his career, but more on also the knowledge about like how we go about and deal with this habitat. Not just only the conservation, important on the life of land, especially the ecosystem. Yeah, ecosystem.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so without further delay, we'd like to Jimmy to share with us. Start from on your this career. Why you actually choose the animal, like especially tiger. So maybe you can share with us.
Okay. Great. So thanks, Arena, for the nice introduction. Yes. So I've been like involved with the tiger work since quite long after passing out from the college. So the reason probably I am with the tiger is because probably tiger chose me, not the other way around. So I was looking for any kind of work which would be like interesting. A species was conservation, indirectly will protect other species also, which are part of the ecological, habitat. And I found out, tiger was one of the best species that will represent that. So usually, there are different kind of species. For example, we can go to the next slide. There are some flagship species, there are some priority species, there are some umbrella species. So for flagship species, for example, are animal that represents an environmental cause or campaign or habitat. It is a symbol or icon. For example, like the orangutans that represents the industrial agriculture related deforestation in Southeast Asia. So similarly, a priority species is a flagship species or a keystone species that is used to define a region or reflects a threat. Tiger, as such, is considered a umbrella species, which is usually a keystone species who have a larger range, need a large habitat, and thus their conservation covers the protection of a wide range of habitats, and indirectly helps the ecology of the entire habitat it resides in. and that's why Bengal tigers are one of the most prominent umbrella species in Southeast Asia and South Asia. And coincidentally, it is both, as I said, is one of the keystone animal also. Since this is, tiger sits on the apex of the food web chain, so this is very important for the ecosystem. And being a carnivorous animal, they regulate the herbivore population very well. So if we just remove the tiger from the ecosystem, the overall population of the herbivore, wherever the tiger resides in, the overall population of the herbivores can over time deplete the forest resources and slowly kill the forest, like the situation with the red deer which happened in United Kingdom. But however, tiger conservation in India has had greater impact, or in the places where they reside in has greater impact than just regulating the beyond regulating the ungulate population. Like I said, it is one of the best known animals, and therefore it is also considered as a cultural icon. So it represents area where you have high density forest area, and within those forest area you have got animals, biodiversity, where you have different kind of animals and biodiversity within those forest area where tiger resides in. So they usually reside in varied habitats such as grasslands, forest, tropical rainforest, mangrove swamp, and because, since as I mentioned, they are the apex predator, they control entire habitat and the prey, which in turn is controlling the entire ecosystem. So this connection to the food web is very essential, and underscoring the importance of why I choose or why I'm working with tiger conservations. So I understand, and everybody knows, where tiger will thrive, the watershed millions of people will rely on those remain where the tigers will remain. Similarly, like I mentioned, there are hundreds of rivers originating from such forests, and for tiger landscape, which range from the world largest mangrove in Sundarbans to temperate forests and snowy mountains of Bhutan, it overlaps globally important ecosystem, many of which are part of Asia's last wilderness. So these biodiversity-rich areas harbor a wealth of critically important goods and services that I will speak of also in later on, that service millions of people downstream, from mitigating climate change, safeguarding fresh water, to reducing the impact of natural disasters and improving the health of local people. Also, like I mentioned, next slide. So 60% of biodiversity within a tiger range forest will have other biodiversity. So in short, next slide. It's a powerful cultural mascot, and as I mentioned, is an umbrella and flagship species, and it shapes the community structure of the ecosystem. That's why this is a species which is very resilient and which is very important for the service of the ecosystem. Unfortunately, from 10,000 in the wild in early century, we have now around 4,000 odd wild tigers left in the tiger range countries, of which more than 70% of that are in India. So that's why this was one of the reason. Probably I was curious and I got interested to work in this species. If that answers your question, Karina.
Definitely, yes. That's really interesting. Okay, so I think most of us, we always keep thinking like tiger is something like, I think the impression come to us is just like it's very like strong.
Especially
like for Malaysia, I come from Malaysia, and for us, tiger is one of the symbol for strength. Okay, that is the positive images. But besides that, then I don't think that we see tiger as other than that, we don't have much thinking. So I think today, from your sharing, I think we learned a lot that why tiger is important in the ecosystem, and and then I also looking at like the challenges. I know I can see like why the awareness program is getting important, because if you look at the planet coverage now, I think first we only have less than 30% of land. And then with all sort of challenges, I think currently, for the surviving for tiger, the suitable land for them to live on, I think it's like you mentioned to me, it's like less than 9%, right? It's almost like 9%. So, so what sort of awareness program and the project and your initiative so far? Because you've been talking like since year 2004 that you have been involved. So maybe you can highlight to us. Yeah.
Sure, I'd love to do that. Yeah, many people, kind of has a misconception that tigers are very ferocious animal or dangerous animal, and should not be, should not be looked into as animal which are very charismatic. But it's quite opposite actually. Tigers are very charismatic and very docile actually in the wild. So they won't attack to you unless they are being charged upon, or whether they're in defense, or whether if they are with the cubs. So, for example, I will speak about how tigers can be used as a conservation species. So, I will quickly start with my brief, kind of autobiography, how I come into and what kind of work did I did in all this from years. So, my basic qualification is veterinary science and animal husbandry. From where I started getting interest in the animals. So when I was studying veterinary science and did my masters, then I thought maybe most of the veterinary science graduates or students were mostly interested in the domestic animal. So I had the curiosity of how we can use that knowledge to treat wild animals. So that's where I got into the subject of wildlife, and later on towards conservation more rather than in the clinical side. So then I went to a institute called Wildlife Institute of India for my, where I registered for a PhD work and did a lot of research work in central India. And after that, I worked for organizations like WWF, Panthera, and right now I'm with a regional organization called Arainnet. So that's my basic, kind of background, which pushed me towards wildlife and conservations. So next slide. So when I was with WWF India, so I was leading kind of the tiger work, tiger program in 7 different landscapes within India. So India has got different kind of landscape. If you go to the next slide. So from the north of India till south of India, from east to west, we have got different kind of landscapes, starting from arid deserts to Tarai Arc, to Brahmaputra grassland, to swampy areas, to the Western Ghats and central India. So these kind of landscapes have different kind of populations. So based on the habitat, based on the prey availability, all there. So I used to look into the work of the tiger program for WWF India in all this landscape, and was working closely with the forest department. And the main strategy that we used was, next slide, was it was all multi-approach strategy that we use. So obviously we used to do a lot of survey to assess the conditions of the habitat, the populations, and the prey population. Then we used to use technologies like camera traps and other devices. Of course, trying to ensure that the capacity, the manpower resources are enough. Working closely with the communities, trying to ensure that offenders who are involved in poaching or illegal trades are sent to court, and of course cooperation and collaboration with a lot of different stakeholders. So these all combined together can only lead to a successful conservation efforts by anyone who is involved into it. If you go to next slide. So we used to work very closely with communities, and the main issues with the community was, of course, the conflict problem in most of the landscape because of different reasons. And we were trying to translate those local knowledge of communities and conservation experience into an effective response team to manage the conflict situations. So the major impact while working with the communities we found was it could lead to effectively decrease the casualties in the both sides of human and animals. And of course there was more involvement of the local people living in the fringe of this forest area to manage the conflict. And livelihood also kind of we had to look into those part, because we also definitely have to look the alternative ways, so how we can decrease the resource use from the forest, so that their dependency on the natural resources are reduced. So while I was working there, so some of the slides, some of the pictures that we came across while using camera trap, like I said, we used to do for monitoring. You can see tiger killing a cow and carrying it over. And next slide, you can see the cubs playing around in all those places. So this kind of this kind of photographs inspire us and motivate us to carry on more for the conservation of tigers and other species. Continuing on that, then I shifted from country level to more regional level when I joined WWF Greater Mekong team and based out of Cambodia, where I was looking into priority species. Next slide, where I was looking into tiger conservation, tiger introduction efforts, then elephant conservations, and of course dolphin conservations, and looking into the wildlife trade area and wildlife market areas into it. So basically, the forests of Greater Mekong is really rich in biodiversity. Next slide. But it is under intense pressure from different sectors, including development and minings. So the main approach that while I was working there for a couple of years was to lead the regional initiative for the wildlife and wildlife crime, where we looked into the international wildlife markets in the Golden Triangles. We looked at reducing the trafficking and illegal trade. We looked into tiger introduction efforts in some of the countries where tiger population was poached out completely, totally exterminated. Then we looked at we're trying to look at baseline conditions and transboundary agreement, as well as kind of reducing the poaching to zero level in priority conservation target areas. So these were some of the projects that I kind of was involved in. We have a very great team out there, still working on out there. And beyond that, we understand Southeast Asia and the South Asia. Next slide has got a huge next slide. Huge human influence and population, as you can see from the map. If you look at the places like India, places like China, and some places like Southeast Asia of Malaysia and Indonesia, we have like huge population index. But also these are the places where you have very high biodiversity rich areas because of some reasons I will tell you now. So if you go to the next slide, so that's why, because of the high pressure, you have increased level of wildlife crime happening in these countries. And the reason why we have so much high biodiversity rich areas in the Southeast Asia is because of the endemism. So if you go to the next slide, so Southeast Asia countries is known global hotspot of biodiversity and endemism because of the position it is currently in the geography. If you look into it on a smaller spatial scale, there are multiple biogeographical subregions within Southeast Asia. If you can look into the slide, we have got three confluence of biogeographical subregions, which is like the Indo-Burman, the Sundaland, the Philippines, and the Walasi. So because of such confluence of the biogeographical subregions, we have lots of variety of biodiversity within these areas. So for example, between 15 years of around late 90s to 2015s, more than 2,400 new species were described from this region only, which is like equivalent of 2 discoveries a week. So that's like really amazing. So that's why this region is so much high, such rich in biodiversity. But we also know in the next slide, but we also know the same region is developing very fast. Over the past several decades, the Southeast Asian regions have seen a progressive increase in the size and populations of its cities, with the population approximately doubling from around 750 million in 1985 to around now 1.6 billion, which is equating to around 40 or more than 40% of the world population. So over the half of the world population, the UN has said that in urban land over the next 2 decades is predicted to occur in Asia, and with large proportion of those relatively rural areas such as Vietnam and Myanmar. So that is alarming. So with the population booming of humans, you will have extensive pressure on the land, and you will have extensive pressure on the biodiversity. So if you go to my next slide, but we also know Southeast Asia has is the home to some of the highest deforestation rates in the world, with an estimated 14.5% of regional forest cover is lost within the last 15 years, which is like alarming. If you can equate it to percentage wise, this is like 1% loss every year. We are losing out forests out there. So this is a very conservative estimate, by the way. So some people say 73% of the land covered, which was there in 1973, is now reduced to 51% only. So in recent year, there has been increased use of palm oil. You have got rubber. You have got recently wood pulp, and these figures are increasing rather than decreasing. And UN has projected that there will be loss of 98% of forest of Indonesia by 2022. So just imagine 90% of the forest that's existing right now would be lost by 2022, and 46% of the original forest that was there in Indonesia has already been done, with a loss of over, as you can see in the slide, is 917,000 hectares between 2009 and 2013, within like 5 years. And Indonesia and Malaysia alone kind of make up almost 86% of the global palm oil exports. Well, in addition to that, they have world highest palm oil exports. Indonesia has also some of the highest export of rubber also. So do Thailand, of course. Then you have got Southeast Asia alone exports 87% of the world natural rubber. But unlike palm oil and pulp paper, rubber is still predominantly very small holders. Charcoal, nobody thinks about charcoal. Charcoal production is another, which is a driver of deforestation and degradation across the region, with around 44% of the global charcoal production happening from this region, which receive very little attention. So these are all alarming. So can we go to the next slide? That's why we say, over the like I mentioned, over 30 years, 30% of forests has disappeared. So 1% every year. Next slide. So we have got a lot of challenges, but of course we are not saying that we cannot be working on those primary or secondary important challenges. So these are some of the challenges that is here. Especially the major challenges, primary causes are conversion of the forest for crop plantation and agriculture, which could be impacting the biodiversity level in the entire region. And beside that, you have got developing roads, infrastructures, legal policy restrictions, tree plantations, which could be affecting the biodiversity in a very, very hard way in this region, which I said is already a very rich biodiverse area. Next slide. Okay, so this was from here. I can, I was telling just about the way we were working. I was working in South and Southeast Asia, so primarily working into the both wildlife and wildlife crime area into all these countries, and trying to take the efforts of all stakeholders together to make sure that such kind of wildlife crimes or wildlife loss is reduced.
Wow. Okay. I just listened to your sharing from the facts to the information.
Yeah.
Kind of like getting worried, no?
Yeah. No. I mean, jokes apart, definitely is a worrying time, but we should be optimistic. We can, still work together as individual, as organization, as government, as different stakeholder, and try to reduce the loss that's already happening.
Okay. So we just have a distraction just now, a little bit. So can I hear? Can I have Jimmy your voice back again? Is it you hearing?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We just have just a little while. So when I say the word, I'm worried. Actually, I'm looking into the another side. Is that's why we have this ecotourism. I think we have a lot of like awareness program, and also we have like an initiative on conservation activities, such as I think many organizations came into like they started to input in, make this activity to let the tourists or the visitor or any normal civilian come and participating, and with the educational program. Yeah. So maybe we can talk later a little bit more on that. But with the current situation, with the challenges we already have, and currently we are still undergoing this pandemic. So you think like with this current pandemic, is affect the life on the land wildlife?
Definitely yes, I would say. I like the when you talked about the ecotourism. I like one thing about this pandemic was this since the travel has been put into restriction into entire world. I think this is an opportunity for the local tourism or the local places to be developed so much well. We all depend, for example, we think countries like Europe countries or Western countries are so beautiful, but we are missing out the local beautiful within our own region. So maybe we should be using this opportunity to kind of project the local tourism so that it helps the local economy also. So coming back to wildlife, while coming back to disease and pandemic. So when we say wildlife trade, so what kind of image people build? So it usually is what? It's like either like elephant ivory being smuggled illegally into some country, or it's an innocent animal themselves smuggled across borders in wire cages, like you can see in the slide, and sold off as a pet, never to leave. I mean, these are the images that we get. So these are good examples of wildlife trade, but it is not always so necessary as this is. Buying and selling of seashells is a wildlife trade also. So buying and selling of a orchid from a protected area is wildlife trade also. Many medicines and herbal remedies contain ingredients derived from wild plants, these are wildlife trade as well, legal as they may be. So the global trade in wildlife, provides disease transmission mechanism that not only causes human disease outbreaks, but also threaten livestock. They threaten the international trade, rural livelihoods, native wildlife populations, and the health of the ecosystem. Of course, like I mentioned before. So outbreaks resulting from wildlife trade have caused hundreds of billions of dollars of economic damage globally. Nobody, I'm not sure if, not sure if people know it, but illegal wildlife trade is the fourth largest illegal business going in the world after drugs, human trafficking, and arms. So people can't imagine how much illegally it is going on. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah, okay. So like I said, 72% of the genetic events is just occurring from wildlife. So how does it? So for example, I'll just give you an example of when it comes to conservation. There may be two type of wildlife. Wildlife trade could be legal or could be illegal. But as far as pandemic prevention is concerned, either can create many of the same problems, both legal and illegal trade. So the issue stems from the journey these products take from an animal's natural habitat to the consumer. So consumer is human beings, right? So we all are kind of consuming those wildlife. So for example, take the example of bat. So we know so much little about how they are being caught, how they are being shipped. So we know they are being caught illegally, they are being sold somewhere. So when these bats are being shipped halfway around the world, for example, the African bats being sent to Southeast Asia countries, or vice versa. And in addition, they are very popular as a home decor, but bats are also known to harbor natural, dozens of emerging diseases or virals or bacteria. For example, all the previous SARS, Nipah, Ebola, and these are all originate from bats. And next slide. And as you know, we don't have to talk about the current pandemic that's happening. So there is a belief that these also originate from that, but the confirmation is yet to come. But most likely, the virus, as we all know, originated from a wet illegal, not illegal, but wet market, which was harboring these animals. So definitely we have to understand that pandemics like this can teach us, or can tell us about how we should be careful, and how we should be kind of neglecting this, how we were neglecting this wildlife trade so much that it led to the entire world being curtailed and entire world being stopped for the past 7 months. So yes, pandemic and wildlife trades are intrinsically linked, and we need to understand that. And of course, there were some very good positive impacts of the pandemic also. If you can go to the next slide, like we actually saw a lot of animals being, walking back to their natural habitat. Some of them were very fake news, but some of them were, of course, there. Many of the animals were, walking without any fear. Next slide. There were places where animals which are not supposed to seen were, seen after many long time because of the clean habitat that they got, because of people not coming out because of lockdown, because of all clean air. As you can see in the next slide, there is the amount of air quality has changed so much that there's been drastic increase, betterment of the air quality in different countries. So of course, next slide, we have got a cleaner environment right now. So these are some of the positive impact that we saw through this pandemic. Of course, it has curtailed the human life, it has curtailed the economy, affected the rural livelihood and everything, but there has been a lot of positivity, and there has been a lot of positive impact of this pandemic also.
Okay, great. So I think based on here, it's like we always look into the balance side, right? You always have like positive, definitely will have negative.
Yeah.
So I
Yes.
think currently the situation that we are always look into, like what we can do, in order for us to prevent getting all into the negative or worse, since
Yeah.
because of this world pandemic, we also get some positive impact. So you think, like, can you suggest to us, like, as a normal civilian or anybody, that what we can actually contribute to protect for this all the wildlife?
Sure. I love to talk about it. See, so if you go to the next slide, so this is a picture, from central India, in this state called, I forgot the exact, Maharashtra. It's in Maharashtra. Yeah, you can see a tiger, walking in front, and two villagers walking non-visually behind him. So
Yeah.
we yeah. So people, at least in India, are very tolerant of wildlife. Okay, that's why we have the highest number of tigers, elephants, and rhinos. Asian rhinos still
Ah,
surviving after being the second largest human population country in the world. Uh, so that's why wildlife and people are connected. We cannot deny that, and that's the fact that we need to understand. If you go to the next slide, so I will talk about why wildlife is connected with people and how it can benefit people and how we can contribute more towards it.
hmm.
Next slide. See, cultural services. It provides a lot of cultural services to the human beings or to the mankind. And thousands of years ago, as we know, tigers walk at the leisure in different uh, jungle areas in the Asian countries, making it very relatively common for villagers to find it. So they did not overlook their beauty, their ability, or their effectiveness in hunting. Perhaps China is one of the richest country in myths, all in the representation of tradition and religions related to tigers and other wildlife animal. So tigers is therefore one of the best known animals. Most people know it. Really, not knowing a real one recognizes this cat please and associate it with, like you said earlier, that with attributes like strength, fierceness, power. Uh, Considering the historical range that has been mostly in the Asian countries. So it has a cultural value. So it is representative of a cultural icon in Asian countries and in different places. It associates, if, for example, in India we associate tiger as the deities, as the vehicle of goddess like Durga, or god like Shiva, and members of different tribes worship it as a legend associated with different god and goddesses. So different countries in Asian countries in Asia particularly have a cultural value for the tigers. Go to the next slide. Now it now the places where it stays in, where the biodiversity that I spoke about, it also kind of provide the food and agricultural security to those areas because of the intact ecosystem. So you get everything from those forests, from those natural habitats where the people are within those fringe areas are living beside this tiger forest. And like I mentioned again, next slide, most of the rivers, many of the rivers, not most, many of the rivers originate from these tiger forests. So uh, watershed problem for people downstreams has been really been helpful because of these forests, because they give out the water to the downstream people who depend, like billions and billions of people depend on this water which comes out from this forest. And then carbon sequestration, of course. Nobody can forget about the medicinal services that it provides. It helps store the carbon, sequester it, and we can be used we are surviving because of all the oxygen that these forests are producing over the years, over the vast areas that is there. Next slide. And I already spoke. I think I've gone through this slide, water slide. And next, medicinal service. Like I said, these forest areas are full of medicinal plants and different herbs and different plants which the local people use it in different medicines. So definitely, all these forests, if you are keeping it intact, it definitely will help all this livelihood and the survivability of the people beside living beside this forest. And of course, tourism, as we all know, has been providing a lot of benefit to the fringe villages as well as to the government. When people spend lots of their income into going into the forest, photographing these animals, and then so helping the local livelihood out there. So definitely, these are the benefits for all the people who are depending on tourism. And of course, if you don't forget, uh, all the many of the direct and indirect services that the people are being provided because of tourism, because of the protected areas that they live near it, provide livelihood for them, which helps in elevation of the poverty level to many extent. Most of the reserve, particularly in South Asia, are in places where there is very high poverty level. So those poverty levels are slowly being taken into care by different schemes by the government, by putting all those local people into livelihood options for the tourism and other aspects, and that's why it helps in poverty alleviation. So these are some of the benefits that the tigers provide or the wildlife provide to the common people. So people need to understand that it's not only about protecting the forest only, but it has larger implications for for all the people living downstreams, upstreams, and in different places where they are residing besides the forest, and as well as the the lot of other resources for the urban people also depending on these forest people and these forest animals. So that's why we need to understand the benefit that the wildlife has larger implications than just being saving one species.
That's great, because after like listening to you, to be honest, before that I wasn't like when I think of India, I just keep thinking on like cultural basis, on like city, historical site, and so on. But
Yeah.
after knowing you and today your presentation, it really made me feel like, oh, I wish that the border can open soon. I really want to go to the site.
Yes, we should, and everybody should.
And then remember that we did discuss about like, we should have like a nice trail, and talking about the tiger life, tiger life, and also from the India, Assam, that's where you come from. By the way, Jimmy is come from Assam. Currently he's in Assam now. In the east part of the India. So we were talking about, oh, that would be nice that we're connecting Assam, into the Southeast Asia. Then let's do a tiger trail. That will be very awesome. And
Exactly.
I think most of the audience today joining us, probably they will be start inspiring by you, and then you already create the interest for them. So if they want to, as a you today, or maybe myself, I hope I'm not too late, yeah.
No,
So
no.
I want to be like involved, like what you're doing. And you see, most of us, especially myself, I'm coming from the tourism background. So what can actually, how do I can build like a career like you, or how do I participate in the ecotourism, or maybe, as you say, like from your positive impact, we can create a lot of job opportunity, economic growth. So how would you advise for the youth or anybody who wants to be joining like you and building up the career? You can share with us.
Yeah, sure. So see, careers in wildlife is not much as lucrative maybe compared to the corporate jobs that people do.
Mm.
So first thing, of course, you will need to understand and know is that you will need to do it from your heart. You can't just be doing it, for the sake of doing it. So you need to have that at least some passion about understanding the animal. It could be tiger, it could be octopus, it could be leeches, it could be grasshoppers, or it could just be plants. But you
Yeah.
need to respect the nature, and you need to understand that the nature is
Mm.
providing the livelihood to so much of many people, and it's providing the healthy ecosystem for all the humankinds to survive on. So you need that. If you have that passion, then of course there is no dearth of places or species to work on. So if you want, I mean, for new beginners, they can start by doing some volunteer works or doing some intern works, learning about wildlife, learning about species, learning about ecosystems and everything. And then you can slowly, with your working with some organization or working individually as a getting some projects, getting some funds, you with your experience you will understand slowly, and then you can probably start working of your own, or you can work with some other organizations. There are a lot of options. I mean, uh, frankly, it is not as glamorous as it has been shown in Discovery, in Man versus Wild, and all those things. But you really need to be very, very, positive, and you need to be you need to understand that you will be living in the harshest of conditions. You would be away from normal civilizations, electricity cuts, mobile networks bad, and all this stuff. If you can kind of manage those, uh, but I'm telling you, the benefits of working in the forest with the animals is so immense that probably people who work in wildlife would never have any depressions or any kind of such diseases.
Oh, depression?
So yeah,
No, no
well, I think
depression.
so. Yeah, I mean, you are with nature. How would you get depressed? So yeah,
No, because
so
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Sorry, you go ahead.
No, so I would say, yeah. So we obviously need a lot of awareness and education. If we go to my next slide, so wildlife awareness and education is one of the major campaigns that is required all over the places in the world, and because there's been so much less
Yeah.
awareness going on, so that's why I thought maybe if we can tell the people about keeping the environment clean, keeping the environment safe, keeping the animals and keeping the populations of human separate so that they can coexist. All of them are important for us. So we need to be aware that equally both wildlife and human beings need the planet Earth. And if you go to the next slide, so we need to understand that tigers and other species are conservation dependent species. It
Yeah.
represents the health of the ecosystem. So
Yeah.
unless they have support from humans,
Mm.
species like tigers or any other species can go extinct in a quick one shot. We have seen species like dodos, we have seen species like rhinos, and species of tigers or subspecies of tiger which have got extinct over the years because of the exploitation, the torture that we did to the ecosystem, the torture we did to the habitat destruction, and fragmentation, everything which has led to such extinction. So these are, like I mentioned again, is conservation dependent species, and we need to be working closely with all the stakeholders to make sure such kind of extinction doesn't happen for species. Like it, we how would it sound like when we cannot save one species from being extinct because of our fault? So
Yeah.
next question, next slide. So I would definitely, therefore, suggest all my audiences and all who are interested in wildlife to be aware of it, to be aware of how wildlife is helping the ecosystem, how wildlife is helping the planet Earth, and you will understand it slowly, and then you will have the interest to save all this wildlife and conservations. So
Yeah.
thanks, and any questions are welcome.
So I think we have actually answered most of the question actually raised by the collective audience that we have
Right.
actually completed. And I think after listening to you, like almost getting like 35 minutes, on your presentation today with the question, I think the impact come to me is like go into the very fundamental is to know is to love is to know. So we stay in the planet, so we still have to know our planet well. So whether it's life
Right.
above
Exactly.
ground or life below water, which is the next session that we're going to introduce is the life below water, but it's
Yeah.
equally important. And I think as I saw your message is still, I think as a human that we stay on this planet today, we take a lot of advantage. Yeah, we take a lot of
Exactly.
advantage. But we do not know the future. I don't know about our younger generation will have the equally advantage like us if we're not going to do something. Yeah. And I'm really grateful that you give us some kind of like not just only awareness and deep a little bit insights, into like eye-opening for us as a normal civilian or anybody, shouldn't think animal as just a dangerous. So we need to come into the balance. Habitat is important, planet is important, human is important. So everybody is equally important. Yeah. So what is your message to us before we have to say bye?
Okay. So,
Message for us.
yeah. So I would say, we consider ourselves as a very intelligent animals or beings, but I would think otherwise. We won't be intelligent. We won't be, the best species surviving in this planet if we don't control our over-exploitation ways of destroying the nature. So we need to
Yeah.
understand that nature. I mean, we are dependent on nature. Nature is not dependent on us. And this pandemic has really showed the world why we should respect nature. And if we continue ignoring, yes, how to do it? Yes. So if we continue ignoring,
Yeah.
we could do it like this.
Yeah, the
So,
lure.
so your passion should come from your heart. Your
Yeah.
message should
Passion
go
from
to
the
your
heart.
heart. Yeah,
Yes.
and you need to understand that if we do not control our ways, we will have a much worse virus than the COVID in future.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
I would suggest my message would be respect wildlife and respect nature, and everything would be fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you for joining us this session. And we really, really wish the pandemic will be over and future no more pandemic, please. So we
That
have
will depend on
yeah, we have
that will
yeah,
depend on us.
depend on us. Yeah, correct. So thank you watching with us, and as like our branding has said, purposeful sensory journey, right? So whatever we do, wherever we go, so we make it a good purpose. So I hope to see you sometime, somewhere, and in the future we can have like more session like this, and then we can have different levels of the discussion also. Yeah.
Oh,
Thanks
I'm
again.
so glad. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks again. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for the
Bye.
opportunity. Yeah.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.